Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, CastBox, Player FM, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have an out-of-this-world episode lined up for you today. First up, author, cancer survivor, and astronaut Hayley Arceneaux is here to celebrate Astronaut Hayley's brave adventure. And later in the show, we'll be welcoming back Michelle Person. She'll be here to celebrate her new social studies curriculum, Meanwhile in Africa. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Marie Nichols was recently on my Connecticut Book Festival's podcast, and what a delightful woman. One of the things she said really struck home with me. She said, parents nurture with care, siblings are taught to share, but grandparents embrace the dares. We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest is a colorful, fun-filled book where this grandmother dares to embark on a wild journey with her grandson into the dinosaur forest. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on bookshop.org. You and your kids and you and your grandkids are going to love this book. It's We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Hey, families, would you like to share a miracle with your kids? At the Wolf Conservation Center, hope was fading. The endangered Mexican wolves dreamed of a pup, but none had come. Until one tiny miracle changed everything. Meet Trumpet, a real-life wolf pup whose incredible birth brought joy, hope, and a lesson in conservation. Trumpet the Miracle Wolf, written by Leocadia George, is a heartwarming true story that will inspire your whole family. Teach your kids the power of hope, love, and protecting endangered species. Get your copy today and join the wild adventure. Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Join us right now from Memphis in Tennessee. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new picture book. Is called Astronaut Hayley's Brave Adventure. Please welcome to the show, Hayley Arceneaux. Hey, Hayley.
Hello. It's good to be here.
It is great to have you on. This is all about you. Am I right?
The children's picture book?
Uh-huh.
Yes, but there are some fictional elements to it. It's a fiction children's book, but it is inspired by my real life events.
So let's talk about both the book and the real life events. Start at the beginning, please.
So, my real life story is I grew up in Louisiana, had a very normal childhood, and then I was my life changed when I was diagnosed with bone cancer as a 10-year-old. And I just remember feeling so afraid and not knowing what the future would hold. But when I was treated at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, I felt hope and I felt like I was going to be okay and I could dream about my future. And my time at St. Jude influenced what I wanted to do in life as well. And so almost 2 decades later, I got a job at St. Jude. I worked there as a physician associate with children with cancer who are in the hospital. And my life, I thought everything was pretty well established. And then I get this very surprising email one day, and I from the hospital, and I joined this Zoom call, and they asked me to go to outer space. I was asked to be part of a mission that was raising money and awareness for the hospital. And because I had been a patient at St. Jude and I was working there, they asked if I would be the St. Jude ambassador on the space mission. So I joined SpaceX's Inspiration 4, the first all-civilian mission to orbit, and spent 6 months training, spent 3 days in orbit in 2021, had the most incredible life-changing experience. And then when I got back to Earth, I wanted to share my experience through books. So I've now come out with 3 books. I have my memoir, which is called Wild Ride. I have a young reader's version of my memoir, Wild Ride, which is aimed for ages like 7 to 13, and have just come out with my children's picture book called Astronaut Hayley's Brave Adventure.
Wonderful. So a number of years ago, I received an email from that said, hey, your podcast, your little podcast that you produce down in your basement has been nominated for the iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award. And
That's incredible.
Well, thank you. But I hit delete because I thought, well, this is a scam. Someone's
No, you did not.
I did. They were very persistent. So we went on the board and everything.
It shows your humility.
I'm just curious, if I had that reaction, what was your reaction when you jumped on this Zoom call and they said, yo, Hayley, we want you to go out into space?
I knew it was real because it was from some St. Jude employees that I actually had to look up, and I saw that they were like pretty high up at the hospital. But they didn't ask me initially in the email to go to space. They said they had a unique opportunity for me and that they wanted me to join on a Zoom call to talk more about it. And when they first started telling me about this space mission, it wasn't clicking for me that they wanted me to be an astronaut, because that is very unbelievable. And so I remember thinking like, okay, this is like, what does this have to do with me? And when they asked me to go to space, I was absolutely floored and shocked. And immediately I said yes. And then I said, okay, wait, let me check with my mom. But my answer is yes.
Unique opportunity is putting it lightly, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
So what was it like? Well, before that, you said this is the first all-civilian crew to go out into space. It sounds great, but who was flying the ship? I mean, great as civilian, but I'd at least want somebody on, that knows what they're doing in the ship with me.
Well, that's a very fair question. And I remember when I told my mom about the mission, she said, how many NASA astronauts will be with you? And I said, none. And there was silence on the phone. But what I learned was we all were trained astronauts by the end of this training. We spent rigorous amounts of time in the spacecraft simulator and then doing all the classic astronaut training like centrifuge training, zero gravity, hypoxia training, water survival training. We climbed a mountain together. And so by the end of the 6 months, we were signed off to fly on the mission.
Incredible. What was it like floating around in space?
Floating is my favorite. I wish I could do it every day. But it's so freeing to be able to flip around, to do anything you want to do. And it's interesting because being upside down feels exactly the same as being right side up. So I would say, well, why would I be right side up? I can be upside down. And then of course, seeing the Earth from space is life changing. We were able to look at that view for 3 days, and I had so many different thoughts and emotions that I was filled with, but it definitely is beautiful. It makes you want to do everything you can to protect Earth. And then also it really makes you feel united with your fellow Earthlings, that we're all on this beautiful planet together, and you see that perspective of no borders, that it feels very, very powerful that we really are all in this together.
Amazing. We've had a couple of astronauts on in the past, and one of the things they shared with me was that you have to strap yourself in at night when you go to sleep.
Yes.
And one of the astronauts said to me, well, I wanted to see what it was like, and then she didn't strap herself in and ended up in a different part of the ship than she fell asleep.
Really, I believe that. One of my crew members, I won't say who, but he didn't strap himself in, and he woke up on the ceiling.
So, this has been fun chatting about space and the phone call and everything. And that takes a lot of courage. But I think the first part of your journey that we didn't really explore much is where the real courage comes in. Going up and facing and battling and kicking cancer's butt.
Yes.
It's a little bit what that was like at 10 years old.
I am so grateful that I was surrounded by this team of people who really gave me hope and who made me feel like I was going to get through this. And so when I initially heard the word cancer as a 10-year-old, I didn't know you could get cancer and be okay. And so what I said was, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And it was a few days later that I got to the hospital. I met my team, and I felt like I was going to be okay, that I would just have to work really hard and get through chemo and surgery to save my leg and physical therapy and transfusions and labs and doctor's appointments and everything that came with it, but that I was going to be able to have a future. And I just fell in love with the hospital and told everyone that I was going to come back and work with them someday. So it feels so good to be where I am now, living my dream job and being able to share with kids who are fighting cancer that they can get through this, and that having cancer will make them who they're meant to be in a really beautiful way.
Where do you think that, obviously being with the caring team, but I think you had to there had to have been something inside you that allowed you to trust in that team.
That's true. I do think that in some ways I was set up with this sense of trust and then just some natural optimism that I'm really grateful for. But I have a very supportive family who they were with me every step of the way, and so we really tried to find the good in all of it, and also I'm a busy person. I've always been a busy person. So as a 10-year-old at St. Jude, I had little jobs. And the St. Jude staff even made me a homemade St. Jude name badge. But I think it was easy for me to think about and concentrate on the needs of others at the hospital rather than on my own struggles.
That's so important. And I think we've had another young guest on who is still involved in her own battle with cancer, who just turned it around while she was in the hospital, started a foundation that brings gifts and books to kids in the hospital. And thankfully, things are going well for her right now, but she's still continuing to do great things for others. It seems when I'm thinking about Cassidy, when I'm thinking about your story, it seems like so often adversity, serious adversity, brings out the best in people.
I truly believe that. And maybe part of that is just the natural optimism in me. But it's also because I've seen it. I've seen groups of people come together. They supported me. They supported my family. And I saw how much they supported the hospital. And then just through my different life experiences, I've seen so much good and people who truly want to help and who take the initiative to help.
Mm-hmm. So how does Astronaut Hayley's brave adventure different than your real life story?
So I'll say what's similar. So Astronaut Hayley, she gets sick And I don't ever say necessarily what happens, but if you look at the illustrations, there are a few illustrations where the character doesn't have hair. So if parents wanted to talk about cancer with their children, then if they think it's developmentally appropriate, then they can have that discussion with them. But Astronaut Hayley gets sick, and she has to be really brave. And she overcomes her sickness. And because she's been so brave, she's asked to go to space and be a brave astronaut. So then she does astronaut training. She launches in a rocket, and then she's having so much fun in space. And there's a little conflict that happens as far as something goes wrong with the spacecraft, and she has to be really brave and fix it. And so that part did not happen in real life. Luckily, our spacecraft was working just fine, but I wanted to take in those elements of bravery, because that's something that I really walked away from. And just this lesson that the book is trying to teach is that you can be scared and still be brave. And that was what I learned through my space mission and the training, that there were times I was afraid, but that didn't stop me from being brave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's I think, an important lesson and message for kids to hear. What other than just talking about your story and maybe talking about the character not having hair, what kind of conversations do you think families can have as they're reading Astronaut Hayley's Brave Adventure together?
I hope it inspires the kids to dream big, and to not only dream, but to believe in their big dreams. And so I hope that parents will talk to their kids about what adventures they want their kids, or the kids want to go on someday, whether that be adventures on Earth or not on Earth. And then I also, in the book, the character celebrates her everyday bravery. So I give some examples of like being brave at school. And I hope that they can have some conversations and really celebrate the kids' everyday bravery. Mm-hmm. And I really hope that this book inspires them to reach for the stars in whatever way that means for them, to allow themselves to have the confidence to dream big.
Yeah. Yeah. We should talk a little bit about the folks who took care of you in that wonderful hospital that you work at now.
Yes, I had just the most amazing care team, and what's special now is I get to work alongside many of them, and they helped during that time, because even though I was going through such a difficult situation that was so outside of my day-to-day as a kid, they normalized it, and they still made me feel like I was a normal kid that just was going through something really difficult. And that and I think it was very helpful for me that they talked so much about my future, because it helped me see the future too.
I love that. I love that. And, St. Jude's has been part of, not that I've been a patient, but it's been part of my life because it's so well known. They do incredible work. Can you talk a little bit more about their mission and the history behind St. Jude's?
St. Jude was founded in the early 60s by Danny Thomas, and he wanted to create a place where children with, at the time, cancer was almost incurable in the early 60s. Like, for example, the most common type of cancer, leukemia, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, had a 4% survival rate. And he wanted to give these children a chance at a hospital that would also do research and not ever bill the families. And to this day, St. Jude families do not receive a bill for their treatment, for their housing, for their transportation, for their food. And so whenever I was going through treatment, we estimate that my treatment cost in the millions of dollars, especially with the cutting edge surgery that saved my leg. But we never got a bill, so we'll truly never know how much it costs. But that was able to give my family so much peace, so that they didn't have to worry about how they would find the money, that they could just worry on helping me get better.
Yeah. And how does St. Jude's manage to do that?
It's a lot of it is through private donations. There's also corporate donations, there's also grants, and then we do bill the insurance, but if insurance doesn't pay, then St. Jude pays the rest.
Yeah. Incredible. What I know now that you are working there, you're a physician's associate. What's
Yes.
that?
So it's it is in the category of advanced practice provider, and so I can see patients and diagnose conditions, write prescriptions, order tests, interpret those tests. School is similar to medical school, but it's not, I'm not considered a doctor, and I didn't go through like a residency program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely wonderful. I have a feeling that this isn't the last stop for you. I have a feeling that there's going to be more things that brave Hayley does. What other kind of things are you hoping to do in the future?
I'm interested to see. I've definitely learned in my life, never say never. You truly don't know what's around the corner. And I think that's actually a very special part of life, that you don't know what's coming your way. But personally, I want to keep sharing my story. I'm a speaker now, and I also do a lot of speaking with students at schools and trying to share my message with them. This message of hope, of bravery, of resilience. And then also, on a personal note, I really love to travel and explore. And I've now been to all 7 continents and space. And I have no plans to slow down at any point. There's so much of the world that I want to see and explore and appreciate. I had a very unique view of Earth, and now I just want to be down here enjoying Earth.
That's wonderful. You mentioned traveling to all 7 continents. We've been downloaded to all 7 continents, which I think is
Wow.
yeah.
That's so special.
My beautiful wife and I were talking the other day about one of her friends is down in Antarctica now, or coming back, and my wife said, "What you gonna see there? It's just snow, snow and penguins. What did you experience when you were in Antarctica?"
It was one of the most beautiful places I've ever been because it's so untouched. And I didn't think I would be as affected by it as I was. But you truly, all you see is nature and these gorgeous land masses that are covered with snow and ice. And then you see penguins and whales and seals and we actually had some adventures down there. This was special. I went with the girl that I went to space with. She was one of my 3 crew members. And we went together and we got to paddleboard while we were down there. We got to do some hikes. Some people jumped into the water. We did not do that, but some people took a polar plunge. So, there's some activities that you can do down there too.
Wow. Incredible. All 7 continents, out of space. Did you ask Elon to keep you on the list for the flight to Mars?
I'm okay never going to Mars. I would be tempted by the moon, but I'm more than okay to just continue enjoying Earth.
We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Astronaut Hayley's brave adventure and also find out more about you.
So you could visit my website, HayleyArceneaux.com. Astronaut Hayley's Brave Adventure is sold on Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold. And they can also follow me on socials. My Instagram handle is spelled HayleyArc, and I'm also on X and LinkedIn.
We also encourage families to, of course, support their local indie bookstores by going in and asking for the book. But even better than that, this would be a great book that should be on the shelves of every public library. So go into your librarian and say, "Hey, can you order Astronaut Hayley's Brave Adventure?" I think kids would love to read that.
Thank you. I sure hope so. I'm excited to see it in their hands.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Astronaut Hayley's Brave Adventure. Our guest has been Astronaut Hayley Arceneaux. Hayley, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Hey there, families. Are you looking for an exciting way to bond and learn together? Look no further than our STEM is Family Fun video series. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of STEM through hands-on activities right in your own home. Our series features lessons from experts at renowned institutions like the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum, the National Children's Museum in Washington, D.C., and Children's Museum Houston. From making homemade rainbow bridges to creating an oboe out of a straw, there's something for everyone in the family to enjoy. So grab your lab coats and get ready for an adventure. Go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the STEM is Family Fun link at the top of the page and let the learning and laughter begin. STEM is Family Fun, where learning and bonding go hand in hand. Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. I am very excited. I love talking about kids' books, but I also love talking about some things that are different. And tonight, we're talking about something that's very, very cool and very, very different. Returning to the show to celebrate her Just Like Me Presents curriculum. It's called Meanwhile in Africa. Please welcome back to the show, Michelle Person. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Jed, how are you?
Wonderful. Michelle was telling me a little bit about Meanwhile in Africa, and it sounds like a really fun way to learn, and also just it just seems to make sense.
Yes, that's our goal. Our goal is for it to make sense.
So as I understand it, and basically you're teaching pretty much all the subjects together as we're learning in working in this curriculum. We're learning some geography, we're learning some history, learning some other.
Social studies as a whole, basically when you take social studies class, you're going to learn geography, history, economics, government. We actually added the entrepreneurship, what it means to be a responsible citizen. That's what social studies is. That's why it's called, it's the study of all the social sciences. So it's synonymous most often with history. People just use the two words interchangeably. But history is just that. It's just like history. It's the telling of like the stock market crash, which led to the Great Depression, which led to like just the history. Social studies is the study of all the things and how they're interrelated. And so Meanwhile in Africa is a social studies curriculum that takes all of those pieces, but makes sure to make it more inclusive and more historically accurate. Because given my background as a teacher and as a principal, what I noticed is a lot of times when we tell the stories of the Great Depression and the stock market crash and the World War I and all of that stuff, we tell it from one vantage point. And everybody else who had a different vantage point during that time either gets like a shout out or completely erased. And so we wanted to talk about history and talk about the complexity of government and how economics work and geography and social entrepreneurship, all of those things together, because we do believe that it is possible to teach all of those things, be inclusive, and be accurate. Currently, social studies programs feel like you can't do all three. You can't teach it all, be inclusive, and be accurate. You got to pick one. And you really don't. You can do all of it together. And that's what Meanwhile in Africa is.
Well, it's scary to think that some people might leave off the accurate part. Why would you learn something that's not accurate? It's interesting. You bring up a good point, and I'm almost 100 years old, but I've fairly recently become aware of the fact that our version of our perspective of the Second World War is completely different than what folks in Russia might be thinking about and in other countries. And that kind of blew me away. And I certainly didn't feel dumb because that was the way I was taught, but it made me understand that maybe we're not getting the whole story.
Absolutely. There's always some stuff left out. The old African adage is like, until the lion will always be the warrior will always be the victor until the lion gets to tell the story. Until the lion can tell the story, because when you're the only one who tells the story, you can control the narrative and you can control how people remember it. And then that literally guides how people act moving forward. So I think, I just did a post. It's the smallest little things like that, like the way we still talk about Christopher Columbus and Ponce de Leon. And I had the other day, I work in school still, and I'm working with a student, and we were working on a passage, and they were talking about Ponce de Leon. And he's an awesome explorer and a great adventurer, and he went off and he had all these awesome adventures, and he contributed and blah, 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 blah. And then 2-page document, and there was one mention of how he died a very wealthy man because he helped put down a rebellion, when he landed in Puerto Rico. And I laughed out loud, and the student I was working with said, "What's so funny?" And I said, I really need you to understand that rebellion, that he put down, I was like, he and Christopher Columbus landed in Puerto Rico. There were already people living there. They took over, and the people fought back because they didn't want to give up their land. And Christopher Columbus and Ponce de Leon killed them and took all their money. That's how they became rich. That's how they were able to have all these adventures. And she was like, "Really?" And she's 12, she's 12. So I was like, yeah. She's like, and we're continuing to read the biography. And, she's like, well, why? And again, the focus of it was the exploration age. That's what they're studying in the exploration age. And so she, and how exploration led to trade routes and all this other stuff. And, and we just expanded territories and growth. But no one was talking about the fact that during all the exploration, what it did it did that for some communities. For others, it decimated them. For others, they lost all their wealth. For others, it was a different experience. That's when I talk about being more inclusive, that's what I mean. Like telling like you were talking about, like, yes, we experienced it in America one way. Russia experienced it a different way. Yes, Columbus and Ponce de Leon experienced, their version of their explorer, their adventures one way. The Tainos, if they were still here, would tell a very different story. And so it's that level of just including, so that Meanwhile in Africa, I guess, is just that acknowledging that there was a discovery of a new route, but also explaining that that discovery led to the mass extinction of an entire group of people. You can't really tell one part of the story without telling the other part. That's the part that was my issue with the history books. You only told the one part and didn't tell the other part. So Meanwhile in Africa just tries to tell both parts. And the other part of that is like the pieces that get left out. So Ponce de Leon had a right-hand man who helped him navigate. His name was Juan Garrido, and he was a West African explorer from Portugal. Nowhere in those in that 2-page documentary biography did anybody mention Juan Garrido. But when you go back and you Google him, you see that he actually was very instrumental in Ponce de Leon being successful in a lot of his explorations. And so again, Ponce de Leon is the name that we know, but Juan Garrido is the name that nobody knows. So again, just making it more inclusive of everybody, telling the whole story and making sure that it's accurate.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I think it's important. And I think kids are able to handle it. That's one of the things that we kind of talk about on Reading with Your Kids is like, oh, well, we don't want to touch this subject with kids because they're too young and they're not ready for it. And I think kids are able to handle the truth.
Absolutely.
And understand that things are complicated.
Beyond complicated, I think kids are able to understand, they're able to separate. I think that when people say we can't teach them historically accurate information, it's because it'll make them feel bad about themselves. I don't think that's the case. I think they look without saying anything, they look critically at the information they're given and say, well, why would somebody do that? That's not nice, because they're living in a society that is more assimilated. And so they know that it's not right to call someone out their name. They know that it's not right to treat someone different. They know that it's not right to physically put your hands on someone or all of that stuff. They get those things. So when they're reading about what happened, they're not taking it personally. It's literally, they are so far removed for them. It is literally like reading a story and being able to critically look at the story and say, well, it was really great that that Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. However, it really sucked that he had like all these slaves. Like, that wasn't cool. What was he thinking? And not be offended. They're not offended. They can say he did these things over here and he did these things over here. I understand why he's on the nickel. Like, they get it and they don't own it. That's the part that I wish people understood. You can absolutely have the conversations. The kids don't own it. They don't take their connection is so far removed that they're not walking around after the lesson going, gosh, I'm such a bad person. Like, like my ancestors they don't think like that. That's not how it is. So I think that we definitely do them a disservice when we don't think that they are critical enough thinkers to separate their identities from history. But also we don't give them enough credit that they want to learn and be better. So why not tell them what the bad things happen so that they can strive to be better?
Yeah. So let's talk about what we're going to learn, what kids are going to learn Meanwhile in Africa. I had last year at this time, I was in Italy at the International Children's Book Festival, and we're staying at a hotel, and in the hotel with me were a large group of authors and publishers from various countries in Africa, and I had a great time getting to know them, interviewing them, sharing meals and drinks with them, and what a fascinating continent. It's such. I think some of us here in America, we hear Africa and we think it's one thing. When the reality is, there's a whole lot going on.
Many things, yeah.
Yeah. So what things are we going to learn about in Meanwhile in Africa?
So in Meanwhile in Africa, it's very purposeful the way that I do it is, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. We don't, when mostly in America, when people think Africa, they immediately think slavery. I would say that that's probably the first thing that people, pops into people's minds when you say the word, Africa to most Americans. And purposefully, we don't use that. We don't use the word, slavery until the third grade curriculum. Kindergarten, first grade, and second grade is just almost parallel history. So like what I was trying to do, and the reason it's called Meanwhile in Africa, is paralleling, this is what was happening in 1492 in America or in Spain. Here's what was happening in 1492 in an ancient African civilization. Because, and here's how these two things are related. Here's how government started here. Here's what government looked like here. Here's how trade and barter went here. Here's how trade and barter went here. Here's how cities grew over here. Here's how cities grew over here. And so when you do it like that, you, in my opinion, are explaining to kids that Africa's like, it's not this, like you said, it's not this like really crazy place where like they're oh so different. They're very similar in a lot of ways. And also where the goal is to change that. I don't want slavery to be the first thing that somebody thinks of when they think of Africa. I want them to think pyramids. I want them to think metalworking. I want them to think, history and science innovations. I want them to think father of medicine, Imhotep. I want them to think richest man who ever lived. I want them to think, Queen Nzinga, who was one of the most successful, queens ever and managed to keep her country independent, during her entire reign when everybody around her was falling like dominoes. Like, I want them to associate Africa with, glory, with prominence, with pride, and to know that, yes, there were things going on here. There were also things going on here, and they were positive things. And so, and meanwhile in Africa, that's what they'll learn. They'll learn that, every symbols, right? Symbols is a topic that you learn beginning in kindergarten in social studies. And we learn about the bald eagle, we learn about the Statue of Liberty, and we learn about, the cherry tree and a bunch of different symbols. But what we do is I also bring in a bunch of different symbols from different areas. And it's hard. I will say this. Africa, like you said, is so large and it's so vast. And so what I tried to do was in a very broad stroke, give an example from Western Africa, Eastern Africa, Central Africa, and I couldn't do it for every unit, but sometimes we would focus on Western Africa, sometimes we do Eastern Africa, sometimes the North, Central, and South, because they have 5 huge regions, and even within those 5 regions, there's so much diversity. But, I want that when they think of, when a kindergartner leaves, they will know that the Statue of Liberty and a bald eagle symbolizes freedom in America, and a lion is used in, I think, I forget, but it's like a large number of flags, and it's the national animal for a bunch of different nations over there. The lions also can mean bravery, and it has nothing to do with anything other than a symbol can mean something else. And in this country, it means this, and over here, it means that. But the takeaway is just, now they know what a symbol is, and they know what a symbol is from people from the country they live in, and from people for people who look more like them. That's it. That's the behind the sinister plot. Like, I just want them to know more, be better world citizens, to know more about the world around them, and to make the parallels so they can see that there's far more that we have in common than we don't. And so they'll learn all the things. They will literally learn all the things that you learn in a regular social studies class. The only difference is, in addition to learning it, we're adding a more inclusive perspective. That's literally it. So whatever they would learn in social studies in school, they're going to learn it meanwhile in Africa. The difference is it's going to include their perspective and make them feel seen and recognized, and start to challenge the idea that the first thing that a 7-year-old thinks of when you say Africa is either famine or slavery. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're setting out to do. We want them, and it's not just Africa. It's because at some point we do transition into what happens after slavery and what happens when enslaved people came to America, and what they did to impact American society. So then it's, okay, so this is what life was like in the 1930s for white America. This is what life was like in 1930s for Black America. Again, there are parallels. There are things that happen over here, things that happen over here. There was excellence over here. There was excellence over here. It's all about making sure that we can teach the concept and still make sure everybody is seen.
I love that. It makes perfect sense. As you were speaking, I flash back to when I was, I think, high school or college, and I thought, and I'm in a history class, and I'm learning about this thing, and I was really curious, like, what was going on in the rest of the world? How come we're not talking about what was going on in China and Russia, whatever it is? So I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's it would be an exciting way to learn, I think.
Social studies has unfortunately, it's not the most exciting. People don't usually kids don't, when you ask kids what's your favorite subject, social studies is at the bottom. So we absolutely try to address that as well. So I've tried to make sure that it's not a lot of just sitting and reading. There's the information is chunked, and it's written in a way that it is child appropriate. Because I definitely looked at some curriculums before to try to get a sense of, is there anything else out there like this? And the things that I found, it was either really, really rosy and not grade appropriate. It was too young, babyish, or it was really, really deep and way above, like your average 6, 7, and 8-year-old. So I had to create something where they could read it themselves and it could be relatable to them, but also that it wasn't just reading. So what you'll find in it when you're doing the program is it's not just reading a text. It's reading and then doing a project, and then going out into your community to find an activity where you can practice that, that the lesson that you learned in history, you're refining it at home, and then we link it to, like how do you take that concept and how can you apply it to your life and your community and where you live, and then how can you go out and be a good steward of that lesson that we learned from history, the good part of it. And so you're going to see service learning, you're going to see hands-on projects, you're going to see research, you're going to see pictures and drawing and doing and saying. It's not just like a big, huge, I'm going to read a Britannica, Encyclopedia Britannica book from beginning to end, and that's how I'm going to learn the information. It's bite-sized pieces of information written at a developmentally appropriate age, and then they practice what they learned through a bunch of different activities. That's the goal.
One thing that I've said here on the podcast is it seems that at some point somebody in education said, okay, we're going to take history and we are going to teach it in a way that is absolutely the most boring way possible. And I've never figured out why anybody would make that choice, but it does seem like it was made at some point. And I'm so happy that there are innovative programs like Meanwhile in Africa. Is this something that's just appropriate for a school, or is this something that homeschoolers would be interested in?
No, our largest population right now are homeschoolers or families who are just looking to supplement what they're doing in school. It'd be great. It's great. It's a great supplement for a school program, but yes, homeschoolers typically latch onto it and they use it with more fidelity usually than our traditional public schools.
Yeah. Boy, I attended a couple of homeschool conventions, and, I had heard all the stereotypes of homeschool kids, and they don't know how to get along with others, and they don't socialize. And I found the opposite to be true. The kids were so happy, and they all had friends, and they ran around in packs together, and they were very well behaved. And every single one of them, when I asked them, because I had heard, these parents are forcing the kids to be homeschooled, and isn't that terrible? Every single kid that I talked to, and I talked to hundreds, loved the fact that they were homeschooled.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I find that to be true as well. I was on social media earlier today, and I done a post where I was like, there are instances where obviously I am an advocate for alternative forms of schooling, with certain exceptions, because it can be hard. It's hard to homeschool if you are in a 2-parent family that both parents work, or if one person has to stay home. It can be difficult to do. But I also typically, if you have a child with special needs, always say, by all means, stick with your public school, because that's where the most resources and the most money is going to be for your kid. But I was saying that, it's a hard time to figure out how to navigate this space. And she said, at first, what seemed like a comment that was, oh, go homeschooler. She was like, I enjoyed during COVID, homeschooling my kid, but, I think it should be regulated. And I said, well, that's kind of the opposite point. Like, it's not supposed to be regulated. And she went into how, but the results are better and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm thinking to myself, you've obviously not met a well-adjusted, you have an idea in your head of what homeschool is supposed to look like and what these kids look like. You've never met any. Because if you've gone to a convention like you just described, I think a lot of people would change their mind very quickly about what homeschool is and what it could be.
Yeah. I'm excited. So, Meanwhile in Africa, are we going to have Meanwhile in China or Asia, or Meanwhile in South America, or any other?
I would absolutely love to partner with someone who was more well-versed in Chinese, Chinese or Indian, Australia, like other cultures. I think absolutely that, again, same concept, teaching all the concepts just from the vantage point of here's how it looks over here, here's how it looks over here, and then just keep doing that. So again, we're more alike than we are different. I am still working on creating this. We are at K through 2 right now. But the request that I get often is, when will 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade be ready? It's harder. Those grades we are working on, but it's harder to, they are a little bit more read intensive, and you do start to get into more critical thinking, and so we're working on those right now. But I absolutely have not ruled out and would love to, work with some people or start the process of doing the research to do the same thing for, so that for multiple groups to be included in the conversation. Absolutely.
Where can people go to find out more about Meanwhile in Africa and the other things that are going on at the Just Like Me Presents?
You can always go to justLikeMePresents.com. That's our main website, and we have a bunch of different books. Our books are we have a math program, we have the social studies program, and so you can always go to to JustLikeMePresents.com, and then the other place it will take you straight. If you're just interested in Meanwhile in Africa, go to meanwhileinafrica.com. It will take you directly to the link to get the program. And actually, for the month of February, we will be running a special where the physical workbook is $49.99. So you get the physical workbook, the teacher's edition, and you get access to several ebooks, how to advocate for your parents without being adversarial. What are they teaching my kids? What is, what's going on in the public schools? They get there's a coloring book. So you get all that for $49.99 this month on meanwhileinafrica.com.
We've had a really eye-opening time speaking to the driving force behind Just Like Me Presents and their new product, Meanwhile in Africa. Our guest has been Michelle Person. Michelle, thanks so much for being back with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Jed.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids. We'll join us for the next exciting episode of the show. You can join us. You can find us wherever you find your favorite podcasts. We love the iHeartRadio app. We love Good Pods, Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We love any platform that is carrying Reading with Your Kids, and they're all carrying Reading with Your Kids. We love them. We'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you find us on. That would really help us grow the army of families that we need to help all families all around the world grow closer through reading. I want to invite you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at JedleyMagic on X. We have a great YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And we have a pretty wonderful website, too, readingwithyourkids.com. Authors, be sure to click on readingwithyourkids.com. There's a button at the top of the page that says, Authors, click here. That's a great way to find out how you can be a guest here on the show and tell thousands of Kidlet fans all over the world about your fantastic children's book. You can also find out about our very effective and very affordable promotional services. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. First up, we want to thank Michelle Person for joining us again. Please be sure to check out Meanwhile in Africa. We also want to thank Hayley Arceneaux. We really had a great time meeting Hayley. Be sure to check out Astronaut Hayley's Brave Adventure. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, everybody here at Reading With Your Kids, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.